Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Haplo, a Percy Jackson Reeling podcast. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week we read Chapter 8 of The Last Olympian, I Take the Worst Bath Ever. They said the shampoo was no tears, and I cried.
Do you remember L'Oreal Kids shampoo in the weird fish bottle?
That's how I remember it, yes. I remember that weird fish bottle.
Why did that burn your eyes worse than regular shampoo? I feel
it burned like acid. That's what I remember. But
was that like some sort of cruel prank? I don't know.
Or they got it mixed up in the bottle factory. Oh yes, let's give him more tears. But Percy Jackson didn't have that L'Oreal fish soap thing, though I'm sure he used it as a kid. It came in his little blue bottle. This week, a lot happened. I was actually shocked about it, and I love this chapter to its core. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, we move forward in the plot, which is not really. I mean, we've kind of moved forward in plot in previous chapters, but it's sort of just been like a real slog, and I've, as the person who is designated as knowing nothing and reading this book chapter by chapter every week, it's kind of put into sharp relief like how little is revealed to the reader in each chapter. I wasn't entirely sure what the plan was. I kind of had some idea, was maybe thinking the river Styx, but we finally find out all about that and about how that relates to Luke, how that relates to Nico. We deal with more stuff of like Nico's betrayal, I guess. I mean, we talked about that last episode. Betrayal is a complicated and possibly not quite accurate word for what he did, but that's a whole other conversation.
See, for me, I've always been a big proponent of like knowing what the plan is, and then the whole thing is trying to get to it, and then conducting it and seeing if it happens or not. And here, I like that it's kind of like, when it came to it, how this kind of stuff has been laid out. I want to say it's kind of weird because Rick Riordan, before he did Percy Jackson, was a mystery writer, and mystery writers, put things together, added some clues. But when you're reading those chapters, and this has happened since the last book, and this also happened in the Demigod Files, we don't know nothing until it happens, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess it happened now. If that was my one critique, it's just that it wasn't set up really well. I guess it's like the mystery, but it's like the Rick Riordan thing of like, we don't have enough time to tell you, or he tells it in a vague way, or he doesn't tell it at all. It's like, I told my mom the plan, but we don't know what the plan is. Like, it's going to be a big reveal, which I guess it is.
Yeah, there was just something like that. I was going to say, like, at a certain point, it felt like not organic to hide what the plan was, because we kept seeing scenes where Percy was talking around what the plan was to Nico, but we, the audience, weren't hearing it or seeing it. There was a lot of like weird sort of like off camera, so to speak, conversations that were happening and then implied to, like, it felt like so intentional that we weren't told what was happening. And at a certain point, it like didn't seem realistic that that's like the way that they would have talked to each other if they had a secret plan. Like, even if it was secret and like had a lot of far-reaching, complicated consequences, doesn't necessarily mean that they would like be speaking in code, sort of. Like, it just was kind of silly. So I'm glad that we're kind of past that.
Yeah, and that's like the major critique of this whole kind of arch about this plan, is that it's almost like it stops on a dime, like it's going, and then, oh, okay, we're here at the plan. Okay, we're going to do the plan. The plan's going to work. And then Percy Jackson becomes a Greek superhero, which I'm fine with. I like when you have things like this. We're going to get into, because there's a lot of consequences. There's a lot of actually interesting plot devices, some interesting tension. But B, why don't we get into the chapter first before we get into the real Achilles heel of the story?
Yeah, right. So the chapter begins right where we left off in the last chapter, which we kind of were talking about. Nico betrayed him, I guess. Like, Nico made a bad deal with his dad, and as a result, Percy is locked away, so that way Nico can become the once and future king and rightful heir to this whole prophecy situation.
Yes, the dead fortune.
It's just kind of like a weird triple cross situation that like Nico feels bad about and Percy is angry about. And it's kind of funny because this seems like such a big deal in the last chapter. Like, Percy is thinking about him being locked away for years and being unable to fight in this war and being sort of like impotently watching as like everyone else fights the war and then
dies
eventually
around him.
Yeah, and then eventually Nico will rise and take his place in the prophecy. Obviously, all of those things were not going to happen. There was one book left. Not even one book left. This is the last book. There's only a few chapters left of what this story has to hold. Like, it's not gonna time skip several years and be like, and now Nico's 16. Like, that was definitely not gonna happen.
No, it wasn't gonna be like that.
It's just very funny that, like, it seems really intense. Like, he thinks he's gonna be locked away forever, and literally almost instantaneously Nico appears and is like, I'm gonna break you out of here. Like, it's almost like no consequences, really. It seems like so easy to escape the underworld in a weird way, where it's like, I don't know if just like our characters are more powerful because they're of the big three, and as time goes on in the plot, they're learning to be more powerful. I mean, Nico has the side effect of like being very weak after using his powers, but still.
I think that's just a side effect of everyone, because that happened with Percy a bit, though he does have the power of the water. And I think it's kind of interesting. Again, this is why, like, for me, magic systems, they need to have rules. Rules are important in any magic system, as well as, like, rules in a horror movie. Though what I like about here, when it comes to Percy Jackson being thrown into prison, it becomes very quickly realized that Hades might be a small dum-dum because he puts him in a cell designed for dead people.
So he's just gonna die.
Well, I was thinking of, like, the Haunted Mansion, because the way that Percy Jackson describes it, well, it had no windows, no doors. Well, Hades would, like, pop up, well, there's always my way, like, looks up, and there's a spooky skeleton hanging. Ooh. But I like that
it's not even a real skeleton, it's like a Party City skeleton.
It's like a Party City skeleton. It's like Bone Daddy. I love it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that this is kind of made out to be, like, a really big deal and such a horrible double cross. And, like, even him and Nico immediately are, like, kind of, they don't, like, immediately become friends again, but even like
they're chummy
the
a little
conversation
bit, but they're not
and
friends.
him like forgiving him happens right away because he kind of has to escape. It's just really funny how quickly everything from the last chapter is undone in like maybe the first few paragraphs.
I like that the beginning of this chapter opens up with Percy Jackson trying to escape. He pulls out a sword. Of course, the sword doesn't work. He tries all these things, and it needs Nico to break him, otherwise he would have died.
Yeah, and then he just kind of takes a nap, which, like, relatable, like, oh, well, this isn't working, I guess I'll sleep. And then he, like, wakes up startled to, like, see Nico. And I like how he just sort of impulsively, like, just strangles him, like, you jerk, you double-crosser, you. And it kind of doesn't matter, though, because they immediately sort of, maybe not make amends, but, like, at least are like, okay, well, we have to work together.
They understand they need, like, a mutual agreement that if they're going to get out of here alive, they need each other. Though I like that Percy Jackson goes to sleep and we have another dream about Rachel Elizabeth Dare and her weird family.
Yeah, he dreams about a few things. He has, like, sort of just weird visions of a bunch of different stuff in this chapter.
Well, he dreams about Rachel and how she's still mad at him, and that her family's so rich that they have a special chef that makes special omelets, and her mom reads travel vacation things at places that they're going to.
I would love an omelet chef to just bring me an omelet.
Do they just specialize in omelets? I feel like I went to school just to make an omelet. Omelette du fromage?
Well, no, but you know, like when you go to like a buffet
yes.
and there's an omelet station? That's my jam. I love an omelet station. Though I don't like having to interact with people. That's stressful. I wish the omelet could just appear. But having to be like, I want this in my omelet, somehow that's stressful. I don't know. Maybe this is a hashtag first world problem.
Oh, yeah, that must really suck, B. Here I am eating prime rib and, like, you give me more crab legs at the Vegas-style buffet.
There actually was an omelet station at my college, but it was, like, always such a long line that I was like, I'm just gonna eat these off-brand Cocoa Puffs.
Sounds good to me, B, those off-brand Cocoa Puffs, but I like that Nico's able to break Percy out of jail, like he manipulates the dead, because, of course, Nico can manipulate the dead in this way, making them go to sleep, even though they're dead. Tired.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that we don't see much of Nico, but whenever we do, he's just like, I have all these powers and I can do all this stuff. And it's, I don't know, he kind of like really functions as a plot device for Percy, where whenever he's in a jam, he kind of just like appears and is like, I can shadow travel, I can do this, I can make all of the guards fall asleep.
Well, here's where I'm going to play devil's advocate. If it was the exact opposite of Percy Jackson in the water, we'd be saying the exact same thing, because Percy Jackson can do all these things.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, like, that's kind of how the big three function is. Like, when they're like in their element, then they're kind of able to be a little overpowered and they can do a lot of stuff. And the side effect, of course, is like being really worn out, which in the case of Nico is like he's just like practically passing out by the end of this chapter.
I guess the most ironic thing, though, is that Thalia, in her own domain, she's like freaked out because she's afraid of heights.
Yeah, like she doesn't even need to use her powers to have like a weakness. It's just that she's like,
oh no,
stressed.
I'm gonna shoot a hurricane at you. I'm gonna suck the air right out of your lungs. Like, there's things that she can do that are more horrifying than everything else you could possibly do.
Yeah, I miss Talia. I hope she makes an appearance soon. She's a good character, honestly.
I miss her
I'm
every
getting
day.
a little tired of dealing with snivelly Nico and all of his whiny little problems.
Oh man, don't say that out loud. But they run outside, and guess who's there to meet them as they're trying to run from the guards? They meet Miss O'Leary.
Yeah, the good.
This is
good
where
girl.
that's where the fan art comes from of her as a Chow Chow, is them getting on her back and like boofing out of there.
She's so good. I love a good, just loyal dog that appears when you need her. And I also like that, of course, Cerberus makes an appearance, and he's like hype too. They're like, we're puppies and we're hype, which is like, even if they're mythological and gigantic, they're still excited.
I love how sad it is that Cerberus sees all this happening. He's like, can I play too?
He's like, can I go on walkies?
Oh man, that would have been awesome if like Percy Jackson rode on Cerberus and Nico rode on Miss O'Leary.
Yeah, that would be honestly really great. Do you know like that vine that's like, do you want to go for a walk? And the dog is like, like immediately the second that the guy says walk. I'm just imagining Cerberus doing the same thing. All three of his heads.
For me, there's a special place in my heart for characters that have a companion of a dog. Like, for me, I love the Dresden Files, and not really a spoiler, but halfway through the book series, he gets a gigantic Chow Chow, and it's so great.
Yeah, I love a dog sidekick. Or like even a character that functions like a dog, even if it's not technically a dog, you know what I mean? Like in like Toy Story, like Bullseye's a horse, but he's kind of a dog. Like he acts like a dog.
But B, they also have a dog in Toy Story. Buster.
Yeah, they do. They do, yeah. Well, Buster's a real dog, but he's not always there because he's a real dog that needs to do real dog things.
Yes.
And there's also Slinky Dog, but he doesn't act like a dog at all, really.
Well, no, he doesn't.
He just acts like Ernest because that's who voices him.
Hey, if Woody says it's all right with us. I can't do an Ernest voice. But what ends up happening is they make it to the River Styx, almost as if it's too easy.
Yeah, they kind of the problem isn't so much getting to the River Styx as it is.
It was getting to the underworld.
It was getting to the underworld, but also like now that they're there, it's really not so much like can they do this, because they probably can pull it off, but would they want to? And then that's kind of like when we're talking about the trade-offs of, now we can talk about what the plan is, which is basically if you go into the River Styx, you can become impervious, basically, like
Achilles,
infinitely powerful, like Achilles. But the one problem is you will have a fatal flaw, which you kind of need to have in order to still be human, which is like a complicated lore thing. And also, you might die if you don't do it right.
So let's break this down right now. I feel like this is a very important thing, because what happens to Percy is, obviously, because he's the hero of the book, this happens to him. And we'll get into, like, Achilles. The ghost of Achilles comes and warns him and tells him what happens.
Yeah, like, you're about to get into some stuff if, like, literally the ghost of Achilles himself is like, hey, I did this and it was bad.
And if you do it, you'll have a life just as bad as me.
Yeah, it's, like, some pretty intense, heavy-handed stuff. Like, there isn't even, like, Percy having a vision of that or whatever. Like, straight up Achilles, like, with his messed up ankle is like, yo, this is a mistake.
Not even that, but an entire army of people who have tried it and have failed miserably.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some existing lore about how this is a bad idea.
Now, I'm not no expert at Percy Jackson. I guess we kind of are, but this might single-handedly be the stupidest thing Percy Jackson might ever do in his life. I mean, there's other things later on.
You mean decide to go into the River Styx? Yeah, probably.
Yes, this is probably the most stupid.
I don't think it's the most stupid, just because it's like it's a totally bonkers risk, and it's really kind of
but he knows the danger
thing. But yeah, exactly, like he kind of already knows that it's a bad idea, but he feels like he needs to in order to defeat Luke.
It's like assisted suicide almost at this point.
Yeah, I mean, like, he doesn't necessarily think he's gonna die, but he does know that there's, like, a lot of horrible associated risks, but also knows it's kind of, like, what he needs to do in order to
It's
face
the
Luke.
last
'Cause,
effort
like,
that
what
you need
else
to
is
do.
he gonna do? Yeah, exactly.
It's the hero sacrifice. This is, once again, if I'm going to keep going on the hero's journey, which this entire story is, it's the hero sacrifice, and he'll also get the elixir, which will give him a superpower. Which, okay, let's talk about what happens in the sense of, like, with the Achilles heel, because I find this so fascinating how Rick Riordan has kind of structured this and how...
Yeah, so he, like, explains, like, the function of the river Styx, which, I mean, you and I had spoke before sort of about how I don't know if there's, like, a specific reason why you need to have, like, a fatal flaw, or I don't exactly remember how they described it in this chapter. It's like a vulnerability. Why you specifically need to have a vulnerability when you go into the river Styx, I kind of always assumed from, like, cultural osmosis and knowing about the story of Achilles that it was just because he was held by his mother by the ankles when he was dipped in the river Styx.
Yes.
And therefore that part of his ankle was not made impervious because it was covered up. But in this chapter, it's sort of explained that you inherently need to have that vulnerability, not necessarily in your ankle, but somewhere on your body to sort of keep your soul tethered to your humanity, I guess, which is, like, I don't know if that's actually, like, canonically, like, a ancient Greek mythology thing, or, like, a Rick Riordan, like, retcon, like, this is... we still need to give them some vulnerability, or else we just have both Luke and Percy completely invulnerable with absolutely no flaw, in which case, like, how would we ever have a fight or, like, final battle type of situation? Because, like, they'd just endlessly fight each other forever. Like, that would be a purposeless thing.
So what I'll say about this is I have two theories for this, and the first being how probably Rick Riordan, when he was writing this book, he tried to look for the real story of this, and how what Rick Riordan likes to do is try to find, like, the base version of it, because when we're talking about Greek mythology, you're either following it through the oral tradition or you're following it through theater and just, adaptation after adaptation, eon versus eon. Possibly this is, like, the original version of it. That's what Achilles, like, picked as, like, his vulnerability was his ankles.
Yeah, like, it's like a choice somehow.
Yeah, because it becomes, like, this famous thing where you kind of get shoehorned into the idea of when you think about what your greatest vulnerability is, we call it the Achilles heel. The bigger you are, the harder you'll fall. I like to use Star Wars as an example. Like in The Empire Strikes Back, how they take down the AT-ATs is, they're impervious to, like, blaster fire, but you have to use your tow cables to, like, wrap them up, and they fall because of their feet.
There's going to be, like, some sort of vulnerability, even if something seems completely insurmountable and difficult
There'll always
to
be
defeat,
a weakness.
which, I mean, obviously that's, like, a narrative thing that happens in all sorts of stories, but it's kind of, like, interesting the way that he, like, gives rules to this magic, like, oh, it's not actually the fact that Achilles was held by his ankle. He actually needed a vulnerability anyway, because otherwise he would have, like, I guess, like, dissolved into nothing. That's kind of, like, another added thing about the river Styx, is, like, it doesn't just make you powerful, but if you don't find some sort of vulnerability that keeps you tethered to your human self, then you will just, like, disappear, I guess, or die.
So theory 2B is that when it comes to Percy Jackson, and we also find out when Luke does this, is that the problem is like with the Achilles heel, if it was the same thing of, like, oh, they get dunked by the ankles, the problem would be that Percy Jackson and Luke would also have the same vulnerability, so they need to come up with their own, because it's like that weird type of dynamic tension where you don't have, it's kind of weird because you have the sense of, like, well, I know Luke's weakness. Luke's like, I know Percy's weakness. You got to go for them toes. Like, you can't really do that because there's no tension whatsoever because the whole audience knows. And I think Rick Riordan put his cards close to his chest by saying, we don't know what Percy's weakness is, and we don't know who Luke's weakness is. So we have, like, that big buildup of, like, what if they find it? What would it be like? And I like that a lot when it comes to this.
Yeah, that adds, like, a layer of, like, mystery and intrigue, because otherwise it's like, okay, so if you're inherently going to have a vulnerability in your ankle, just like Achilles did, then it would be ridiculous to have a fight between them, because they would both know what it is. So even if you are impervious, it doesn't matter if everybody knows exactly where your vulnerability is. So they'd just be, like, stabbing at each other's ankles for like the rest of the book. It would just be silly. Like it wouldn't really be as interesting.
Well, it would also be like, think of like, just imagine, obviously there's going to be a big battle at the end, is that Percy Jackson and all of his friends like, go for his ankles. That's how you kill him. You got to hold him together.
I imagine like the freaking like Benny Hill music playing, like, na, 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 and they're just like stabbing at each other. Like it would just be incredibly ridiculous. And it adds a layer of kind of intrigue of like, they are both extremely overpowered now, but they have a vulnerability that neither of them knows about, but they know that they have to have one. It's somewhere, but they don't know where.
Now, this is a good lesson in talking about like power leveling and like when you have a character that becomes invincible in this way of like they're impervious to damage, and how Rick Riordan has done it is very clever because you have this vulnerability. Like for me, an example that I will give is The Matrix. At the end of The Matrix, Neo becomes a god. Well, what do you do for sequels, B? That's the problem. Like if he's pretty much God, how does one kill God?
I mean, obviously you have to give them some sort of vulnerability, or you need to make their antagonist equally powerful so that there's some sort of interesting like conflict there. Because you can't have either the protagonist or the antagonist completely overpower each other. They need to be equally matched for it to be interesting. And I guess that's kind of why, not just plot-wise, but like narratively speaking, it makes sense for Percy to decide to go into the River Styx, because otherwise there's no way he could ever defeat Luke/Kronos or whatever, because we've already established that he's like basically impossible to defeat unless Percy makes this decision. So we kind of just need to do that in order for it to like actually be interesting and not be like a very boring fight again of like the alternative of them just hitting each other at the ankles is Percy deciding not to do this, and Luke being like, oh, well, you're dead because you're not nearly as strong as I am.
Yeah, and see, that's kind of the problem when it comes to, like, in The Matrix Reloaded, how they got around with it is probably one of the worst things that ever happened, which is, oh, all the agents have upgrades. Like, it doesn't really change anything. Neo's still a god, but, like, nothing's really... You pretty much just retconned it as quickly as possible that Neo can do whatever he wants in the Matrix.
Yeah, then it doesn't matter that you're powerful, because as long as the power of your enemies outweighs you, then it's just like this endless goal you're trying to chase, which isn't exactly what they're doing here, because it's like we've already established that Luke/Kronos is really powerful, so it's actually just raising him to the same level and then giving them each some sort of like vulnerability, so that way it's not like boring and overpowered either, where they're just like they can't ever defeat each other.
The great thing about this is that Percy Jackson isn't becoming super powerful. He's just on the same equal playing field now as Luke, as it's always been. Luke had an advantage, well, Percy has the exact same advantage, so neither of them can hurt each other unless they find this weakness, which for me is good writing. This is very, very good writing in the way of like, okay, we're going to use a Greek mythology method. This is what it is. And there's already a built-in thing with the Achilles heel. Well, how can we expand upon this and make it well? And this is where Rick Riordan, once again, when he's playing within the rules of a magic system, that he has it explained, he's phenomenal. Like things like the empathy link, like they're kind of like loosey-goosey kind of.
Yeah, they're not quite. The rules seem to be fast and loose, and it's like it really only matters when it matters, and it doesn't when it doesn't, and it kind of is just as the plot dictates, you know?
No, and then you have things like the Golden Fleece, whereas you put it on the tree and, okay, everything's healed. That's what the Golden Fleece does, except it works a little too well, and there's things with, like, the prophecies and how those work. Like, when Rick Riordan's, like, writing in his world, and he's writing things with mythology that are in mind and already have things established, he's phenomenal. But when he starts to add things like, okay, Nico can do this, Percy Jackson can do this, Thalia can do this, it's like, can they really?
Yeah, it's always interesting when you're dealing with the big three, because they're kind of inherently overpowered in some ways, though of course Percy kind of has his butt handed to him when he meets the Luke-Kronos nightmare hybrid and realizes that he's overpowered. And I guess that's kind of how we come to the conclusion of Nico taking him to the River Styx, is he's just like, there's no way I could ever defeat this guy unless I do something drastic and ridiculous, which is kind of what he does.
What is it? My enemy's enemy is my friend?
Well, yeah, that's why he kind of has to make an alliance with Nico as well, who kind of seems untrustworthy and then is but isn't, but that's a whole other thing about whether or not he should trust Nico again.
One of the best things about this chapter as well is that once Percy Jackson goes into the River Styx, he kind of loses all powers. This is where, when we talked about the demigod files, when Percy Jackson goes into that river of forgetfulness, like he still has his powers. This is where Percy Jackson, for the first time in his life, feels like he's drowning, like he literally is drowning. And this is so scary because he describes what it's like to drown. And I've almost drowned before, and it's like, oh my God, this is horrifying.
Yeah, it's kind of funny in a way that he's like not used to even the idea of drowning or like fearing that he would drown. But in this case, it's like, it's not water, I guess, or it's like
it's
there's
pure
other
energy
stuff going on in there, so that he's not like impervious to it in the same way that he is to regular water.
And for me, this is important to Percy Jackson because Percy Jackson has always been a character, like, he can figure things out and he does things that he gets hurt with, but this is like the case of like, oh man, I might not come out of this alive. And the only way that he comes out of this is that he starts hallucinating. He thinks of Rachel, thinks of Grover, he thinks of Annabeth, he thinks of Tyson, and his friends are the people that help him remember like where he is. And he gets that lifeline and climbs his way out with Annabeth kind of hallucinating, giving him a purpose of like, I have to protect her, I have to protect my friends. Like, this is actually a very, very powerful scene in the sense of Percy Jackson knows that he's seeing a hallucination and not just Annabeth.
I mean, a lot of his dream sequences are like pretty transparent in that they kind of show where his emotional state is at. And in this case, it's not quite a dream sequence, but it functions very similarly of like visions relating to like, I guess his like subconscious or what he values and cares about. And in this case, it's his friends, and then ultimately Annabeth standing there pulling him up, which is like obviously a very metaphorically resonant like symbol of like, oh, she's helping him out of something. Like, that's definitely sort of representation.
Like how she always helps him in these situations.
Exactly, yeah. So there's definitely a representation of like how she's always there for him and that kind of thing.
And this is where I honestly thought I kind of miss having Annabeth. Like, as much as we have, like, that love-hate relationship with Annabeth at times, she's still a very good character. And I kind of miss having her in Percy's, like, constant. Because, like, here, she probably would have known the answers, or she probably would have talked Percy down out of this. And here, the hallucination, which I'm going to guess is almost like a personification of the River Styx. You know, she helped him make that decision, and he does it. And it's such a powerful scene, and he's like, yeah, this is a hallucination, but now I feel super powerful and things are great, except now I have this vulnerability. Oh man, I don't even want to think about like if we got dipped in the River Styx be, like where would our secret spots be?
I mean, I don't know. I guess you would have to choose a place that would be
It's not. You can't have it internal. I'm going to take a guess and say it's an external.
Oh yeah,
thing
be
on
like,
your body.
oh, like my spleen is my weakness or whatever. Yeah.
Well, what happens if you get it removed? Oh no.
That's true. You'd probably have to pick something a little bit more.
My
important.
appendix is about to burst.
I mean, the weird thing about being human is we do have a lot of vulnerabilities.
Well, yeah, we die by living and we die by everything.
Yeah, but also just like if you were to stab someone in the heart, they would die.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be somewhere like so minute, like it would be like an earlobe.
But it'd have to be something that like Percy's logic of like something that wouldn't be easy to accidentally sort of attack in battle or like would be out in the open very easily. So I
yes,
mean, like,
his
I
left
think
butt
Percy's
cheek.
choice,
Got it.
yeah, right, yeah. But I feel like honestly, Percy's choice of like what his the small of his back, so like sort of if he says opposite his belly button, so sort of like right in his lower middle back. I don't know if I agree with Percy's decision to have it somewhere where he can't see.
My
Because
spine.
it might be easier to like have it somewhere like your stomach or your chest or something where you know it's always protected so you can't like literally be stabbed in the back. You know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of the thing, though, is the idea of being stabbed in the back, because if you put it on your stomach, like you're facing them, you have to defend that spot knowing that it needs to be defended, whereas your enemy will attack you from, usually, this is just kind of like, honor or whatever type of culture you're in. You don't stab someone in the back, you stab them from the front.
But but Luke probably wouldn't do that. Also, I think once they did find out your vulnerability, it would be much easier to get it if it was behind you.
That's why I want to have it, like, not on my hands or my face. Like, it needs to be somewhere that can't be cut off quite easily with a pointy blade. Like, probably like the sole of my foot or something.
The Achilles heel is kind of a good spot in some ways, but
that's too obvious.
We've all hit our ankle on the edge of a razor scooter, so maybe not that.
Oh, that's how Percy dies? He's like ripping it up in New York. My shin, and he just dies right there and then. Well, I guess he was being too rad.
I wonder how many people listening know what a razor scooter is. Like, is that still a thing? I don't know.
Wait, people don't have their scoot game on? What? Oh man, this is unrad. Afterwards, we're gonna get some Capri Suns.
I feel like the handles of a razor scooter always made my hands smell weird, like weird plastic.
Well, all the kids these days have the hoverboards, and it's sad.
That's true. They have cooler stuff than we did.
I think scooters were so cool.
But you've seen where I live, though. You've seen those hills. That's not a very practical thing to ride a razor scooter on.
What are you talking about? That's
dangerous.
so ripping. Wow,
Do you know how many times I fell and just completely shredded my legs falling off of a razor scooter more times than I can count.
I know that we're like being distracted right now, but I have a funny, terrible pain story.
Okay.
So when I was like probably 9 or 10, my parents actually got me an electric like razor scooter, like the kind
I
of
had
you
one
pull
of
the
those.
gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh wow, this is so cool, and I'm like in my driveway, and I'm like looking at it, and I accidentally put my hand on the gas. It starts going, and I'm being dragged along, not thinking to take my hand off the gas. And I get from my driveway to the neighbor's driveway before I just crash. So that was a good probably like 25 feet of pain.
Not advisable to give kids things with motors, honestly. Speaking of giving kids power that they probably shouldn't have, back to Percy Jackson.
Yeah, Percy Jackson can now do some insurance fraud here. He steps in front of a bus. The bus explodes behind him.
Yeah, he yeets into the river Styx, has like this really kind of powerful, sad vision about all of his friends, and most importantly, Annabeth pulling him out of what seems to be the lake in camp, but then it's sort of also the river Styx. He emerges, and he's really, really strong.
Is this like a baptism? He's born again?
Basically, I feel like that must be somehow connected.
But I just realized something. So when it comes to baptism, when they dunk you underwater, you're supposed to like breathe in, so you're supposed to drown. Thus, when you come out,
You're like you're...
Oh my god. So Percy Jackson was baptized.
Yeah, it sort of is. Yeah, it's like a reborn kind of situation. I don't know if that's like necessarily connected mythologically. Like
probably not, but it's still, there's some parallels here.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously, like since time immemorial, people have like put importance in water or like being submerged in liquid somehow. Like it's because it's like the source of life and all of like that kind of metaphorical stuff. So there's probably...
You're born in the water, you'll die in the water.
Yeah, like the womb and that kind of, like there's obviously a lot of like symbology there. So yeah, exactly. It makes sense why different cultures would sort of latch onto that. But yeah, Percy emerges. He doesn't die. And he's real strong.
Which is good. You know what? That would be a really bad thing. This would have been like a short book.
Yeah, that would have been like real messed up if he just sort of like dissolved into nothing like a bath bomb.
But you're giving spoilers. We had that new thing in our store, the Percy Jackson bath bomb.
Percy Jackson bath bomb. Listen, I'm sure people would buy that. Absolutely.
Oh man, it's going to be so bomb. It fades to nothing. It would be blue. It would be blue ocean smell too.
Yeah, but then it would like leave behind like a little figurine once everything dissolved.
Of a skeleton?
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is Percy gets out of the water, and I like how, again, really good storytelling. Percy Jackson emerges from the water and like, oh, did it work? And guess who's there? An entire undead army with Hades at the helm. And I like this. This is where Percy Jackson really shows how invincible he is.
Yeah, well, this is sort of him, like, you know when you get that that star in Mario Kart that just allows you to just knock things
Destroy
over?
everything?
That's
Yeah.
kind of what the scene reminds me of, where he's just, like, so overpowered and he's, like, speed running through the underworld, where he's just, like, knocking things over. Like, that's kind of the energy I got from the end of this chapter. And then Nico's just standing there dumbfounded, like, oh, guess it worked.
I guess Percy Jackson has some big stick energy.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, honestly, because we start the chapter when he's in such a horrible place. We're like, oh, well, I guess he's in jail now. And pretty quickly, he goes from, like, being in jail to, like, and,
Being
like,
the
thinking he's
snot
going to be
of
trapped
Hades.
forever, to being, like, so incredibly powerful that no one can stop him. Yeah, to
Well, I
basically,
mean, I
like,
guess that-
almost curb stomping Hades in the face.
Oh
until
man, that would have
he,
been
like,
so hardcore.
Yeah, it got very close to, like, wait a second, he doesn't injure Hades. Like, obviously, he can't kill him, but I thought for a second...
But he can injure Hades, because we know he can injure Ares.
Right, yeah, gods can be harmed but not killed, is what he says in the chapter.
Oh man, if Percy Jackson like curb stomped Hades, this book would have become like the top one book ever made.
Yeah, obviously he doesn't do that because
It's a kid's book.
Yeah, and also like that that's not within the characterization of Percy. He wouldn't do such a thing, even with all the power he has now.
Well, the difference between Percy and Luke is that Percy shows mercy, whereas Luke does not.
Yeah, obviously that's like the big character difference between them. That's kind of why Percy chooses not to join Luke in the first book when he tells him he should join him. It's because he has different morals than Luke.
Yes, and I find it so interesting that in this chapter we have Percy Jackson starts off in prison. He's at his lowest point, and by the end of this chapter, he is a god, quintessentially. And again, that's a really good structure on things. And I like that when it comes to this, that even Hades doesn't know what to do, and he kind of just gets out of there as quickly as possible. He disappears into like shadow.
Yeah, this is like it's a pretty intense scene because it just goes from like 0 to 60 of like, oh, he's really powerful now he has to like fight all of these guards and then eventually Hades, and he kind of just like really quickly gets that taken care of, well, until of course Hades just sort of disappears and is like, I'm not gonna even deal with you.
Yeah, and that's kind of the cool thing about this is that we get to see Percy Jackson be super powerful, and it's not like, this is a fun fight scene, actually. Like, I'm not really into fight scenes. Like we said, like, I read a lot of fantasy books, so, like, parrying and stuff doesn't really do it for me. But when Percy Jackson's, like, bobbing and weaving and the stakes are him trying to get to Hades, like, that stuff's interesting, but also you know that nothing's gonna touch him on this earth. And I think that's so cool.
I really love, like, the description of him after this whole scene unfurls, and then he says, I looked down at my clothes. They were slashed to pieces and full of bullet holes, but I was fine, not a mark on me. Nico's mouth hung open. With a sword, I think the river thing worked, I said. Oh, gee, he said sarcastically, you think?
Well, that's just you, B. This is like a conversation between me and you, if this were to happen.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, I roast Nico, but that's only because within him I see my own little whiny, sarcastic self.
Well, you're only one bomber jacket away from being Nico.
Yeah, oh no, that cosplay is forthcoming.
Oh no. Do I have to dress up as Chiron then?
That would be so funny. You'd have to buy one of those like weird inflatable centaur costumes.
Hey, it'd be worth every cent. Like how I want to buy a Cats t-shirt for $40. It's a small price for perfection.
That's bonkers. I mean, I do feel kind of bad for how horribly they did at the box office, but also don't do that.
But it's a small price for perfection, B.
I'm not even just gonna try to unpack all that. We're not. You're not gonna loop me into another conversation about cats. We already talked about cats off mic. I can't think about it anymore. I've reached my limit on cats talk.
But B, there's a cat that's committed every human crime known to man.
I know. Yes, I know. Mactivity and Idris Elba and his weird furry costume. And Judi Dench's human hand with the wedding ring, and Rebel Wilson's there with cockroaches and she eats one for some reason. There's just so much happening. I can't.
I'm sorry, everyone. Their brain just exploded.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'll just yeet myself into the lake like Percy would have wanted.
Oh no, you become super powerful. I like how this chapter kind of ends with like this weird type of finality, and Percy Jackson now needs to get to New York City, but also Percy Jackson has also set things in motion because he was trying to tell Hades about there's going to be an attack in New York, and you need to be there.
And of course, Hades is he's not there for anybody. He has no alliances. He has no any kind of loyalty to anybody but himself. So I don't know.
You should take some lessons from Narcissist.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, it's funny because I know that he has been characterized as this sort of like loner character who's not going to want to help the other gods, but there's just something about the way that Percy interacts with him that I feel like they might be setting up something where like he appears as like this Deus Ex Machina thing of like just when the battle is about to be finished and you think that Luke has the upper hand and that Kronos will win and all of this stuff, that I could foresee Hades being like, well, you changed my mind or something, or like very begrudgingly being like, well, I guess I'm going to do this kind of thing. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be like an interesting thing to see.
Well, to be fair, B, there are more dead people on this planet than people currently living.
Right, exactly. So his army of dead people might be very beneficial if he were to help. I don't know. Just my opinion.
All I want is skeleton dinosaurs. Can have that, and I'll be like, sold, this book's great. But the chapter kind of ends in this way. Percy Jackson's now a super god. What do you think's going to happen now, B? This seems like, the sky's the limit at this point, isn't it?
Well, he's gonna find Luke, because that's kind of how he ends the chapter. Well, first, he kind of does throw some shade at Nico, so it's not like they've fully forgiven each other, because he does basically say, you have to stay behind and try to convince your dad to help in some way. I know that that's probably ridiculous to expect, considering he and Nico don't exactly see eye to eye, but, that's their best chance, I guess. And also, this is sort of Percy sending the message of, like, I don't want you to follow me and come and fight with me because I don't fully trust you. Which is, like, he doesn't say that, but Nico gets the hint, is like, you don't trust me. Which, kind of true. Which, I mean, it doesn't even necessarily mean that Nico is a bad person or, like, he intentionally betrayed Percy. He did sort of lie to him, and also he's kind of bad at making decisions or, like, knowing who to trust. So, in the case of Hades, he thought that he was going to, have a nice, clean-cut deal, everything was going to be fine, and no one was going to get hurt. That's not what happened, because he forgot to swear on the river Styx, and also he forgot to, think about the consequences of dealing with someone like Hades. But either way, maybe not the best person to trust in this moment, to, like, take Nico and be like, sure, you can come along and fight alongside me.
Here's the interesting thing, B. Typhoon is halfway across the United States now, so half the time, he'll be there within a couple days.
Right.
So now we're set into a time where Percy Jackson needs to figure out things.
Again, the whole Rick Riordan, we have a time limit thing. The hourglass turned upside down.
Which, for me, I'm totally fine with, because for me, I like the time limit thing because it doesn't give people a chance to dilly-dally. They have to get shiz done. Or
yeah, I mean, if we didn't
happen.
have a time limit, the stakes would be like, okay, well, why do we need to get all this stuff done now? It makes sense that we have to, have a certain time frame with everything happening.
The one thing I'm excited for, though, is that this book isn't like a fetch quest. Like, well, you need to get the spear of Zeus, and you need to get the handle of Poseidon, and you need to get the spooky, glowy, I don't even know, gems of Hades. Yeah, spooky, glowy gems of Hades. And you put them together and you make a super weapon. Like, there isn't anything like that. There's no fetch quest. This isn't The Rise of Skywalker, which is just Fetch Quest the movie. But, B, what is the name of the next chapter?
Oh, geez. The name of the next chapter is Chapter 9, Two Snakes Save My Life, which...
Oh, no.
Okay. Oh, wait. We've met some snakes before.
Yes, we have.
Is this George and Martha?
Yes, it is.
I forget the context of them. Don't they follow Hermes around?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So Hermes is going to make an appearance.
Oh, no. What is he going to say?
I don't know, because his son has done some stuff.
B, he did what they would call in the godly sense an oopsie daisy.
And by whoopsie daisy, I mean he's an overpowered genocidal maniac who's fused with a titan, so, that's a lot. I bet that's not the kind of, popsicle stick framed picture you put on the refrigerator.
B, I just thought something so dumb. It's like, just imagine on Luke's mom's fridge, there's a popsicle stick art on, like, construction paper. It says Mom, Dad, Hermes, and then Other Dad, and it just says Kronos.
Other Dad. It's just like a horrifying, like,
it's just a
inscrutable picture of Kronos.
Oh man, it's been here since the beginning. They just didn't know.
That's horrifying. Anyway, I'm really interested to see Hermes' take on this whole thing, though he always had sort of a weird, distant relationship with Luke to begin with. That's kind of the whole origin story of Luke, but, God forbid, Hermes takes any responsibility for that.
Yes, maybe he might talk Luke down. Maybe there might be some things about this, though. I feel like when it comes to gods, it's usually like he'll come to Percy, here's some advice. Well, see ya.
Yeah, that's kind of what Hermes tends to do. He sort of just, like, appears and is like, I can help, sort of, and then disappears for a good while. So I guess George and Martha are going to return, but save my life is an interesting choice of words, especially because the last chapter left off with Percy saying he's going to find Luke, so I don't know if he's going to see him so soon. That seems like very soon in the book for them to have a one-on-one fight, especially now that he's as overpowered as he is.
There's things like that where you have to have that confrontation where Luke realizes what has happened.
I guess so, yeah, instead of it being the final battle. where he just is like, hey, I'm powerful now. So I guess, yeah, there has to be that interaction. We'll see how that goes. If we're going to see Luke so soon, that's going to be annoying because I don't like him. He's an irritating character.
Are you just like, every time you see Luke, you're just like, effing Luke.
Yeah, I know he's like the main antagonist at this point, or he's like fused. The two antagonists are fused into one. It's funny because ever since he like fused into Kronos, it's kind of been like he doesn't even have like the smarmy, irritating aspects of Luke that I really hate because he's just mostly Kronos now. He's like in the body of Luke, but like his personality is Kronos. Yeah, it's weird because like Kronos is just sort of like this grunting, evil, nondescript villain that he doesn't quite bother me the same way as Luke. Like Luke reminds me of an actual person I would know. I've never met a person who reminds me of Kronos. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's just something kind of funny about how him fusing with Kronos actually makes him more palatable because you're like, oh, you're just sort of like this nondescript, gross villain as opposed to like this annoying guy who also has magical powers.
I'd be really concerned if you met someone with the personality of Kronos.
Exactly. Like, yeah, if what kind of personality would that be? If you meet someone who reminds you of Kronos, turn and run away. Like, it's...
Yeah, scream and run away.
Exactly, yeah. Just turn on your heel. Get out of there.
So, B, do you want to read some listener emails?
Okay, so we got a few listener emails this week. The first one is from Liam, who says... Hey, Zack and B, greetings. I'm still enjoying your podcast a lot, and I get very happy when I can sit down and listen to it every Monday. I have spent probably too much time thinking about Percy Jackson, and I've been wondering, did Rick Riordan mean to write the demigods to have superhuman strength, speed, agility, etc., or was that an accident? I know they are half god and have superpowers. Were they meant to have above-human physical capabilities? What are your thoughts? That fits in very nicely with our conversation this week. I mean, yeah, of course they're supposed to have powers. I think Rick sometimes has issues balancing how powerful those powers are, because sometimes I feel like Percy, I forget he has powers and he's mostly using his sword and it feels kind of silly, and other times he's using his powers a lot and it doesn't seem to drain him that much, so then you're like, why doesn't he use it other times? But other times it does drain him. It's like, it seems to be very selective based on like what's happening in the plot, and also it changes based on which character, right? Because Percy, Talia, and Nico are all the big three, and they have kind of more powerful abilities than, say, someone like Annabeth.
So what I'll say to this is that I think when you think of a demigod, I mean, they're half human, half god, so they're going to obviously have some different physical capabilities other than seeing through the mist, but also you have to think about when it comes to any, demigod, it's like it depends on also their parents. Like a good example of this is like, how does one measure strength? Annabeth really isn't like physically imposing like Clarice is. Like
but strategically she's very good, and she always
flexes
gets
a
Percy
different
out
muscle.
of trouble. Yeah, exactly. So it's hard to judge that kind of power too, because it's like it's easier to picture like, oh, Percy made this geyser erupt, but it's less easy to like see the correlation between like, oh, Annabeth is really smart at strategy, and if she wasn't there in this situation helping Percy among other people, they probably wouldn't have won. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of complicated.
I hate to use this example, B, but here's a really good example of this in like brains versus brawn. So in the Philosopher's Stone, there's the part in the book where Snape's challenge is kind of like you have these vials of poisons. One of them will get you through the flames, and all the rest will kill you. And it's a logic puzzle, and only Hermione can do it because she's a very logical thinking person. You can apply that to Percy in the exact same way. It's like if they're in the same situation, the only person that's strong enough to get past this trial is Annabeth. And she's like, okay, it's easy, simple. But to Percy, you'd be like, why don't we try them all and see what happens?
Yeah, that's kind of the difference between them. It's kind of weird because, like, yeah, I can't really think of any instance of, like, Annabeth, for example, like, using, like, anything that seems like superhuman powers other than, like, she's good at, like, fighting, but only because she's very smart.
Well, she held up the heavens in a trap, so she is very
true.
strong.
She's strong, but it's sort of like that's not a power she generally employs.
Well, I think the best example of this is Capture the Flag in the first book and how she used Percy as a distraction because he's really strong and powerful.
Yeah, she's
she
strategic.
snuck around.
But again,
she's strategic.
like that's borderline like, oh, that's just like a very talented person. Well, like obviously nobody knows a real person who can like control the ocean or something, or like cause a lightning bolt to appear from the sky. Like that's a little different than like a sort of someone who just seems like a very talented human. I'm not downplaying Annabeth. It's just kind of interesting that some of the demigods feel more magical.
Yeah, there's more magic in certain things. Like I would love if Annabeth, like she had like a big brain moment where like she like constructed something with just her sheer willpower of her brain because she's a brain baby and like she can lift cars up, like she's got like telekinesis and stuff. Like that'd be so cool. But it doesn't work like that. Like strength is measured in much different ways depending on which parent you have. Like son of Hermes is an example. He's swift and fast because he's the god of messengers. So of course Luke is going to be swift and fast.
Right. So, yeah, same with Luke. Like again, before Luke was like fused with Kronos, his powers were mainly sword fighting. Like they were something that still a human could train to do. It wasn't like magic necessarily. It's kind of interesting that it really varies depending on kind of who your godly parent is.
You also have like Hephaestus' cabin. They're really strong, they're brawny, but they're really good at building things. Like there's you gain different things. So I guess you also have to look at it as like, well, you have Hercules, you have to use that as like an example of like this person's like physical prowess, and he's known for like you call someone like a Hercules or someone like He-Man or something. You have to have like super strength and all that stuff. That's like the problem when it comes to like superheroes. Now it's like, well, we've used all the powers. The X-Men have used everything. So you have super strength now and super speed. And
no, it is kind of hilarious though to think like if you were a demigod, some demigods, it's like you can swim underwater and not ever drown. And some demigods, it's like you're pretty good at reading books. And it's like, hey, wait a second. What about that not drowning thing? That sounds cool.
So I have a little bit of an email. Are you ready for this, B?
I guess so.
Sup, friends? My name's Jaden. Fun fact, Luke is 22 in The Last Olympian. Thanks, bye, smiley face.
He's 22. Oh, wow. That's like, doesn't that make it kind of more sad? Like, think for a second about, you're like this whiny 22-year-old who like makes everything about your dad, which like, okay, I get that.
You're 22 and you have problems.
And you're fighting a 16-year-old? Like, that's so embarrassing for you. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's kind of always embarrassing when you're dealing with YA, where it's like, why is this 13-year-old so much stronger than I mean, you could talk about literally anything, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, whatever. There's this powerful institution and it's being challenged by, like, a kid. Like, that's kind of the whole point of it. But we're not even just talking about villains. We're straight up talking about, like, you're a camp counselor and you're, like, in your 20s and you have, like, a new camper show up and he's, like, 16 and you're like, I'm gonna fight this kid because I don't like his face. Like, that's embarrassing. That's so embarrassing.
It's kind of funny if you think about it, but it's also, like, the idea of, like, when Luke left the camp, he was, like, 16. So it's weird because it's, like, that weird type of double standard where it's, like, technically they've just aged up. But also in the context of he's 22 now and Percy's 16, it's more funny, but also like Luke should be doing things like getting a job, finishing up college.
Yeah, like what? Don't you have better things to do than like bully a child? That's so embarrassing. Like, can you imagine, like, I'm in my 20s, like if I was like gave a crap about what a child was doing, like who cares?
I don't know. I think for me, I think
like
what's
so
more funny, B, is Voldemort trying to take down Hogwarts with a bunch of like 12-year-olds to about 16-year-olds and failing.
Yeah, no, there's something about YA that you have to like take a step back and be like, wait a second, these are all babies. Why are you doing this? Go to school and don't worry about these things. You were so young and small.
Well, see you guys in therapy.
When I was 16, I couldn't do anything. I was still wearing like weird bootcut Kohl's jeans that dragged in the mud outside my high school. I had no preparation for any of those kinds of responsibilities that Percy and the gang have. So just imagining that contrasting with like Luke, who's like an adult. I did not realize he was that old. I thought maybe he was like an older teenager, like Percy
like
is 16 and he's like 18. But something about him being 22, like that passes the threshold of like, that's kind of weird to like, that's straight up embarrassing. I don't know why. It's just
wow,
really
you're
funny.
putting Luke straight on blast, but that's okay.
Yeah, he deserves to be put on blast. I'm putting him on blast right now. It's official, you guys.
Oh man.
My god, that's hilarious. I don't know how you figured that out, but thank you, kind listener, for informing me of just how much of a loser Luke is.
Oh man, Luke the loser.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Put that on a t-shirt, America.
And by America, I mean us.
Yes. B, do we have any other emails?
Yeah, we got an email from Leo. It says, Hi guys, it's Leo again. Few wonderings about the Percy Jackson universe. What do you think is the most dangerous thing Percy has done so far? And do you think that there is such a thing as a demi-titan? What about demi-monsters or demi-cyclopses? Just wondering. Okay, so first question, most dangerous thing.
I think the most dangerous thing Percy has done is either River Styx or voluntarily holding up the heavens and almost getting crushed.
Yeah, those were my two, probably. Yeah, I guess, I mean, there's like a few things he's done, like when he, the geyser thing.
The gateway arch, because he just jumps off without realizing,
It's hard to really judge, because he's like a demigod, so like he's impervious to certain things, like the gateway arch, dangerous for us, but he's like impervious to
here's the thing though, like in the context of the story, B, he didn't know that he could like survive that fall and breathe water, like at that point in time. That was like a big shock to us.
That's true. We didn't know, but also like he was fine. So, but the actual like the River Styx is probably the most dangerous.
I think it's like the most dumbest thing he's ever done, but it's also been the most rewarding, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The cost benefit thing is a little bit different there, but it's probably still the most risky thing because he could have actually died.
And then I would have laughed.
There was a real risk there. There was perceived risk with the thing about the gateway arch, but there actually wasn't much.
Well, this is a genuine risk because when like Achilles comes out with like a spooky ghost army of people that have failed, you realize this is a challenge not meant for everyone. This isn't easy as you think it is.
So probably, yeah, the River Styx. I wouldn't have maybe had the same answer had I not read this chapter, but...
And then to answer the other question, I mean, anything's possible?
Well, there are demi-cyclopses, because that's what Tyson is, right?
Tyson's a demi-cyclops, and we're talking about, like, children of titans. I mean, we have Chiron's an example.
Yeah, Chiron's a demi-titan. Yeah, so they're not called that, and then demi-monsters would, I guess, Cyclopses are monsters, I mean, not in, like, a... functional sense, but
Tyson is a cyclops, and that's technically Poseidon birthed that in a sense. So yeah, I guess that exists, but also if there's like weird things like demi half bloods and stuff like that, I mean, like when it comes to like titans and stuff, like anything's possible. Like that's Rick Riordan's world.
Yeah, there's children of these things. They don't always get called that, but yeah, there's definitely demi titans because that's what any child of a titan would be. That
Calypso
I guess.
is an example of it.
Yeah, Calypso is the child of a titan. Chiron's the child of a titan. There's several examples in the text. Yeah, I guess demi monsters. I mean, other monster examples. Unlike like Tyson, there must have been. I can't think of any, but yeah, there's children of gods who are
of
monsters.
Titan descent.
Yeah. So
we did get one last email. You ready for this, B?
I guess so.
This is from Maddie. Hey, Zack and B, I'm writing in about a year late to try to explain Nico's sudden anger at the end of Titan's Curse. I myself have ADHD and a brother who has ADHD. There are usually a couple of symptoms of ADHD, but the main one is hyperactivity and not being able to focus. A lot of different people have different levels of hyperactivity. My brother has mostly the hyperactivity side of ADHD, which is often paired with anger issues. It's really hard for him to control his emotions, especially when a sudden change occurs. For example, a surprise baseball practice he didn't know about before. I feel like a big enough change as your sister dying would have a very significant effect on him. He expected his sister would come back alive because he trusted Percy. His sudden outburst of anger makes him a lot more sense in the context. I don't know, maybe I'm biased because of Redacted, but this is how I've always viewed the end of Titan's Curse. Keep staying mortal, Maddie. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this. I think that's maybe an added motivation for sure. Like, I don't know if like that was specifically what Rick Riordan was thinking. Like, oh, this is like a consequence of ADHD, is like he might react emotionally. He's also like just a teenager when we meet him as a character. So like developmentally, you might not act totally rational. Even if you were an adult, you might not act totally rational if you were upset that your sister had died. So like I totally understand that there are like emotional motivations for why Nico might act out that might not be totally logical or fair to Percy and other people. But, I kind of joke when I say, like, oh, Nico is, like, sniveling and whining and whatever. Like, that's kind of true. But also, like, I get he's, like, young and he's kind of gone through a lot. So it's like 50-50. I both think he's kind of annoying and also understand he has reasons for acting that way.
Yeah, and when it comes to it, like, you can base things off of certain things, but in that time and place, a lot of things can happen and change. And especially with, like, when it comes to, like, the whole, I know what you're probably talking about with, like, the redacted thing. It's hard to talk about it without actually saying what it is. It's something that's been coming up a lot more lately. And then, I don't want to spoil beyond this thing because I feel like it's important, but it's something that I don't know if it's like, that's like years from now, actually, come to think of it. But anger comes in different shapes and sizes, especially, taking, shock well of, like, finding out that your sister has died. Like, people react to tragedy and death and destruction in many different ways than straight up anger issues. Like, someone was told, like, their parent was died. Like, I know friends that they just started straight up laughing, like they didn't know how to take anger well. I think it's just grief is a weird thing, and this could play a part of it with, like, having these anger issues. Here's the thing, though: if that's the case, Rick Riordan didn't necessarily explain it in the book in that way of, like, okay, with ADHD you have, like, these anger issues and things. We just know of it as hyperactivity. Like, we're not getting into the minutia at times of it. Like, as a reader, like, we should be informed of those certain things. If he's talking about ADHD, dyslexia, and all these things, Rick Riordan would need to explain for that to occur. Does that make any sense, B?
Yeah, I mean, like, exactly. I don't necessarily know if Rick had, like, the specific intention of, like, representing how ADHD people might react in that situation, or if he was more just like, oh, this person is upset and
grief.
Adolescent and going through a lot. Yeah, like, I don't know. It didn't seem to me, like, intentional, because usually when Rick is talking about something that has to do with ADHD or dyslexia or sort of, like, other, like, neurodivergences and things like that, he doesn't, like, couch it in any kind of language. Like, he straight up would say, like, this is why he reacted. Or, like, I feel like he would have pointed to it more directly, but that's definitely, like, a headcanon that still works. Like, maybe that might not have been the intent, but it does sort of add context to why Nico may have acted the way he acted. But, like, there's plenty of context. There's plenty of reason for why he did what he did, even if you don't include that.
Yes, and I feel like when it comes down to, like, Nico reacting in that way, like, if I found out someone died, I'd probably react either angrily or sad or not even know what to do with it. It's one of those where it's very good to have. When it comes to headcanons, you can always have a headcanon, and if that's the way you want it, that's the way it should be, unless, the author says otherwise within the text, not out of the text. We're not doing some of this death of the author BS. Want a good example of that? Just watch Lindsay Ellis's video about it. Other than wise, it's one of those things that, I mean, anything's possible, right, B?
Yeah, I mean, well, I again, I don't want to, like, shoot down headcanons too, because it's like, even if the author didn't intend a specific thing, doesn't necessarily mean that is 100% not true, or doesn't, like, add an interesting sort of understanding to existing canon stuff. So, like, I'm all for, like, interesting headcanons. I have tons of interesting headcanons about things that are, like, way less fleshed out or make sense with the text, but I just find them fun, so,
Yeah, and there's plenty of things you can talk about and rework with all this stuff. And even with headcanons, there's plenty of headcanons on books that I love and I use. And there's plenty of things that I don't like. Like, there's some headcanons where it's like, oh, I mean, it's possible, but, like, there has to be, like, a weird criteria of things to happen. When it comes down to this, it's a really good headcanon. That's about it. I can't say anything good or bad about it.
Yeah. So we got several Apple Podcast reviews, which I'm trying to get used to saying Apple Podcasts instead of iTunes, because that's accurate.
It's kind of hard, isn't it?
It's old habits die hard. Anyway, we got a couple 5-star reviews. One says, I'm back, 5 stars. Hi, Zack and B. I sent a review that you read last episode. I just want to tell you that the Horse and Around script is going great, and I'm almost ready to send it to you. Thanks for the great podcast.
Oh, no, I'm so scared.
I am so excited. The happiest of New Year's await me, for soon we will have a Horse and Around script, and then we will do a dramatic reading.
I am so scared of that, because I know that we're going to have like a round table of getting people, depending on, we'll get all their friends to read bits and pieces of the script.
That needs to happen.
I'm scared in the way of, like, I can't wait to read it, but also we're going to have to recreate it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to buy some coconuts. Clip, clop, clip,
do you want to read the other review, or?
Yes, I will read the other review. So We actually got, I think this is our second ever 1-star review.
So this is international because I can't see it, so I'm not sure.
This is from Old Canada. So
where they have the bagged milk.
The bagged milk and the Tim Hortons. Oh, I love it. I love Tim Hortons. So this says, 1-star review, not that great. Not that great. Hardly talk about Percy Jackson.
Wait, all they talk about is Percy Jackson?
Not that great. Hardly talk about Percy Jackson.
I don't think that that's objectively true, right? Like, I know we get sidetracked, but there's still talk of Percy Jackson. Surely we have not devolved into just babbling.
Without going into like a rant about this, I think what they're trying to say is that we don't talk about Percy Jackson enough. We talk about the minutia and kind of like structure of the book series rather than, and Percy Jackson kissed Annabeth. Oh, we love Annabeth. Like things like the sense of like talking about Percy Jackson in that way. Like we try to break down myths, we try to break down the structure in that way. And that's just how our show is, because we both like the structure of books and how they work. And Percy Jackson's a good series to talk about this.
Yeah, we get sidetracked. I don't know. That's the show. I feel like if we didn't get sidetracked, there would be no content. We would just be describing what happened in the books.
If it was just all of that, our episodes would be about 20 minutes.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, man. They'll be like, well, that's a chapter. See you guys next week. B, do we get any more Apple Podcast reviews?
Yeah, we have one more from Your Fate 12321, who says, "Hi, Zack and B. I'm only a few episodes into your podcast, but it's already the best podcast I have ever listened to." Wow, thank you. Because you guys actually joke around and have fun during your podcast. Most people will just read the book, explain ideas. You guys actually make it a fun time that makes me want to reread the entire series. Also, if I hadn't already read a series of unfortunate events, I would start reading. Same for Harry Potter, though I might reread. Good job. Thank you. What a nice review, and hilariously in contrast to the other review we got. So again, it's sort of like a lesson in you can't make everyone happy because everyone sort of has a different opinion about what makes a good podcast. So we're just going to do our idea of what that is, and I hope you guys like it.
I think we've done 100 episodes. I think we kind of, if people are sticking around to the 109th episode, that we're possibly suing something, right? Like, oh, man.
Yeah, for somebody, I'm sure, like, there's definitely plenty of people who, it's funny because I've talked to some people, like, especially, like, people in my life who listen to the show who actually are more listening to it for us just talking to each other and less for the Percy Jackson stuff because they're not really in that fandom or care about the book. So it's kind of... It depends on what you want out of a show, or if it's more about, like, you know, the dynamic between the hosts, or if it's about the actual content of the books, but, you know.
So this is what I'll say about this, and I love this review. I think it's one of our best reviews that we got.
It was so nice. Thank you. That's very sweet. I hope I'm encouraging people to read. I honestly should be reading more than I do.
Hey, if my mission is, the hill that I will die on is to get people to read more fantasy, because fantasy opens up so many different avenues of, like, genres. Like, I started with fantasy, got into science fiction, got into classic literature. Like, there's a lot of things you can do. And reading, surprisingly, this is the weird thing that people think now, is that people are reading less now. No, people are reading more now these days. More books are actually being sold than 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, no, tons of people are reading, especially younger generation, so that's pretty cool.
It's one of those things where I'm happy that people like our show. You know, if people don't like our show, that's okay. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. We do the show we want to do. We want more Percy Jackson stuff. I've always said there's more options, but we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you for your review. That was very nice. And I think that's everything for this week.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Though we do have a special thank you we want to give. B, we do have to give a special shout out to the Lightning Thief musical. Today is their last day on Broadway with their 16-week run.
Yeah, their last day is today, which is, I can't believe it's finally happening.
It happened.
I'm really
it came
glad
so
I
quick.
was able to see it before it was gone. I'm really glad I got to see it with you, and then also when it was on tour.
And we got some good seats too. It was so great. Oh man.
Yeah, just like meeting Rob backstage and like meeting like fans and the people from Helping Half-Bloods and all that kind of stuff. Like, it was like an amazing opportunity, and obviously just running around the city with Zach, going on adventures and mostly getting lost, but having a good time doing it.
Yep. It was such a great time, especially when it comes to the Lightning Thief musical. What they have accomplished is something that is almost our dream of like connecting and getting campers closer together. Like our show is like a hub, but what they have done is created magic in the purest sense.
Oh yeah, they've
and
definitely like really revived the Percy Jackson fandom. I feel like people feel a close connection to the musical, and a lot of people are sad that it's over now.
So as we're recording this, their last performance is tonight. So I think from the bottom of Radio Camp Half-Blood's heart, we just want to say, break a leg and bring on the monsters. You guys earned it.
Yeah, congrats to you guys. You guys really accomplished a lot. Yeah, let us know if you're a listener who got to go to the last performance. I bet that was pretty emotional.
Well, it was the Lightning Thief because people were crying from the rafters.
Yeah, even like the performance we went to, everyone was so emotionally invested. Like the demigods out there really put a lot of stock into this musical. They really care about it.
And that's the most powerful thing about this. And I'm excited for the future to see what happens. Who knows? Maybe I might actually come to Los Angeles again, and I totally want to see it again and again.
Yeah,
and
who
again.
knows? Or maybe we'll get another Percy Jackson musical adaptation
Of the Sea of Monsters?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen, but we can hope.
Has there ever been a sequel to a musical?
I don't know.
There has to
there
be.
been? I don't know enough about musicals, but surely there has to be one example.
Like, that's something that I should know about. But,
let us know if you know that.
oh my God,
or
that
if you've
sounds
gone
amazing.
To the last Lightning Thief showing, or any number of things. Just,
Okay, I think the rule is it has to be based off of a musical. It can't be based off a movie like The Empire Strikes Back. You can't have like that.
Right.
Yeah, it has to be based strictly off a musical, like Hamlet 2.
Well, isn't Hamlet 2 a thing?
Yes, it is. It was made by the people from South Park. It was such a great movie.
Yeah.
I love that movie. But we're not going to get into that. B, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphhalfblood@gmail.com. We have a TeePublic. Just go to www.tpublic.com and get some awesome t-shirts. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/radiocamphhalfblood. All that money goes right back into the show, pay for hosting fees, mics, all those things. Well, guys, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal. See ya.
Bye, guys.